Welcome back to the channel. Today we're gonna be doing something fun and I'm just gonna walk you through my journey of owning 30 some, almost 40 bikes. So my passion started back in 2010, so I just want to walk you through the ownership of all these bikes and the reasons why I sold them, why I got them, and maybe a fun story when I purchased it, or maybe even when I own it, or maybe when I sold it. So if you're new to the channel, I'm talking about my bikes today, all the bikes that I own, which is closer to a 40 number of bikes in the last 11 years. And I also do modifications on bikes, and I just enjoy the passion of being able to ride bikes, so I just want to share that with you. So please subscribe if you like this content. So first, I started with my 1982 ZX-650 Custom. This is a Honda bike. You'll see it in the back. I guess the most important thing to say about this bike is, first, I went to pick up the bike without not knowing how to ride a bike, which that was challenging. Secondly, I did not have any money, so no shame on that. I did not have any money when I relocated to the States, so I needed a way of transportation, which is how I got into bikes. It was all about, it seemed to be cool to own a bike, but I didn't have one, I didn't have money, so thanks to my mother-in-law who gave me 500 bucks, and with that I purchased my ZX-650, which I rode for about a year. I put like 10,000 miles, and it had 50,000 miles on the clock when I bought it. So that was my introduction to bikes, and not only that, that was my introduction to modifications. So the bike being so cheap, I bought it for 500 bucks. It was not perfect, so I ended up, putting a little bit of, paint. So I started kind of getting my hands dirty in terms of painting the bike and kind of making some modifications to make it look better, and that's how everything started. So from that bike, I actually went to a 1992 Ducati 900 SS. So the Honda solidified the idea of owning a bike was cool. So I ended up, purchasing a bike for that 900 SS for about $1,000 at the time. So this was a bike that had already been wrecked, so it had a restore title, but it was running straight and it had no fairings because they were all wrecked in the accident. So that was a good opportunity for me to be able to make modifications and not feel like I was gonna be compromising the bike because of maybe damaging any fairings or anything. The bike was pretty stripped down. You can see in the pictures, it was a cool bike. I liked it a lot, so it was just a super nice opportunity for me to get into bikes, and I had it for about a year as well. From that point, I got my hands on my 2005 Kawasaki ZX-10R 600. So that was my introduction to plastic bikes, or the type of bike with fairings. So this is not a super sport bike, but I mean, it was a lot faster than my 900 SS and my CX as well. It was a pretty decent bike. I mean, it was very decent. I actually rode it for about 10,000 miles. That was my first time actually replacing a chain on a bike, which when I saw that and I saw what it was involved, that's how I got into, I'm gonna get my own tools. After the Kawasaki, I actually ended up going to a 1998 Suzuki banditl 1200S. So although I liked the Kawasaki a lot, at the time I still had no car. So, and I had to drive an hour each way from my house to my job. I didn't feel like, going like this on a bike for 200 miles a day was gonna be a good idea. So I ended up getting the banditl with a lot of torque, a lot of awesome characteristics in the engine, from the engine. So I ended up, replacing all that fairing and replacing all that with a single headlight, which I really liked a lot, and I had it for a while. It was an amazing bike. Alright, so after the banditl, I actually got a GL500 Honda. Nothing really to report on this one. That was a super cheap bike that I actually ended up buying, thinking that I was going to be able to flip it. My next bike was actually a VMAX. I bought the VMAX with no key, so at that point I'm feeling more adventurous, and I'm like, alright, I got this. So I actually bought an ignition out of eBay, and I got the bike to turn over. I turned the bike on, the bike ran for about 30 seconds, which stopped very abruptly with the actual engine hydro-locking. So then I got into experiencing something else, that it was not just these, Ducatis or like Japanese bikes. So I got into BUELL. So the bikes I actually got my attention was the 1125R, which I ended up buying two, and I had an 08 and an 09 model. I got things to say about those bikes. wow, like amazing. Like that bike is just so torquey, like, you know, torque for days. In my opinion, they are awesome looking. They look amazing, and they are belt driven. And I guess in case you were wondering, at that point they had already departed from using the Harley Davidson engines, and at that point they're using the Rotax engines, which are amazing. They are very common to see, you know, Rotax engines with more you know, 100,000 miles on the clock. So yeah, it was an amazing opportunity. I guess if you have never heard of like BUELLs, they house the fuel in the actual frame. So what you see as a tank is actually the airbox. So in case you didn't know, so just look it up. They are amazing bikes. After that, I actually got into a Yamaha Bolt. So I got a cruiser. I've never had a cruiser before besides the CX, which I'm not sure if I think the CX was more of a standard bike, but I got a cruiser, and out of the three different models that came out of the Yamaha Bolt, like versions, I guess, I really like the cafe version, so I managed to get my hands on one, and I did a little bit of modifications on the tail to kind of create more illusion that you have more space between the tire and the tail, to make it look more like an actual cafe bike, and it was an amazing bike. I wouldn't hesitate to have another one just to cruise around. Then at that point, I'm actually getting more curious about what else, you know, the bike community can offer me. So I started getting into dirt bikes, which I had a little bit of experience before starting on 2010 with owning a CR880R or big wheel back in the day. So I bought a XR600. At this point, I'm actually feeling more adventurous. The only bike that I have the guts to really bring down to the frame, to paint it and put it back together, and I sold it, and the guy who I sold it to wrecked on the bike. He's okay though. So from here, I went actually into a 1977 L 125 Honda. This bike, I did not do a whole lot, but I bought it for 300 bucks, so I didn't want to pass it on. And I think the cool thing that my takeaway from that bike was the fact that was my first experience really dealing with point ignition. So that was a cool experience for me, just to be able to, you know, wrench on that bike and actually bring it back from nobody using it for years, no carb, no anything. I bought the parts and I actually got it running, which it was very, you know, satisfying and rewarding. Then I'm actually gonna go into more of super sport type of bikes. The bike that got me into thinking bikes are awesome was actually the 2005 or 4 ZX-10R Kawasaki. So which is also called, or better known as Widowmaker. So I actually got two. I had a 2005 Kawasaki Green, or 4, I'm sorry, and then I also had a 2005 Pearl Blaze Orange. Those bikes are amazing. I guess the funny story from that bike is the fact that I stumbled upon a post on a forum while I was, you know, navigating through the Kawasaki forums. I think it was a CX10.org or something like that. And someone said, hey, bikes are amazing. Getting from 0 to 100 in first never gets old. Me being a novice, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, shoot, like I started looking for videos about the bike, and that's when I finally learned about the bikes, and I really learned the fact that you can actually make 100 miles on first. And I did it, I tested it, I experienced it, and wow, I couldn't believe an engine can be so well balanced that, you know, between the ratio from the engine all the way to the ratio on the transmission and whatnot, you can actually achieve 100 miles per hour in only first gear. After owning those two CX-10Rs, I also actually went into a ZX-7R. I think it was from the year 2002 or 2000. That was a cool bike. I rode it and commuted on the bike for a while. I did not do anything crazy with it. Then I'm just gonna start my relationship with more Ducatis. I know I talked to you about my 900 SS that I had from 1992, but then I developed this passion for Ducatis as well, and now I'm living in Tucson, so I am actually getting along with and kind of riding with this Tucson motorcycle club, Ducati motorcycle club in Tucson, which they were amazing. So that's when I started developing this passion for Ducatis, and I actually got a 1999 900 SS. This one, different from the other one, this one has digital fuel injection, and it was a mid fairing because that bike came in 2 different trims, but the one I had, it was the short fairing. It was an amazing bike. Then me liking Ducatis, I actually got into a Ducati 750 That was a monster, which I'm gonna put a picture in here. I actually took it from like a weird paint to I made it my own, and I did a lot of like modifications to it, which I think was a pretty cool bike. From that Ducati, I actually, since I developed this passion for them, I actually ended up landing on a more modern bike. So I ended up buying two different versions of the Ducati 696. One, I think they were both ABSs, but one of them was actually running. The other one I actually bought as a parts bike, which I started putting together. And before I finished the project, I ended up selling my progress, or actually trading my project for a truck. And then you'll see in the picture here, I went into a 748S. My goodness, to this day, I think that's the prettiest bike I've owned. So I don't think this one was the titanium, but I think it was very similar. I think it was an R, no, I'm sorry, a 748S. So I ended up, selling the bike, which, wow, what a regret. I would love to have one of those right now. And I saw one the other day, and I think it was going for like 10 grand. And I bought mine for 4. So yeah, you can probably get the idea. So after I sold it, I wanted to fill that hole with another Ducati. So what I did, I ended up getting two different ones, not at the same time, but right after each other. I actually got two, I think they were 04 or 05 749Ss. I had a biposto and a monoposto one, and that means 2-seater and 1-seater. So one was yellow, one was red. That's an amazing bike. Very similar to the 748, I think in terms of handling, I mean about power, I think they felt pretty good. The 749s, they have the Testa Stretta engine, which is more and more reliable than the 740S Decimo Quattro engine, so an amazing bike. In between all of those, I also got a GL500 and second one, which my intention is to turn into a cafe bike. I really like the styling, but I ended up using the bike for a while and not doing anything, so I flipped that bike, fairly quickly. And that's when they're not necessarily in this order, but I don't want to cover them all, I guess, in different time frames, because it's pretty much the same bike, but I'm talking about VFR 800 Honda. So I got the second generation, or maybe third, which I think it's third, going from like the 2002 all the way to 2009. In case you didn't know, me being a Honda guy from cars, I really like the fact that this Honda came in VTEC, which I think a lot of people hate. But I love, getting on first and being able to, like, when the VTEC hits, just kind of like the wheel is gonna come up. It's kind of fun. At least that's the way I see it. I love the fact that it's single-sided swing arm. Feels very planted, which is something that is not, you don't see every day unless it's a Ducati or maybe some Triumphs. The character of the engine, the sound that produces, it's just amazing. Yeah, and after the VFRs, I was also developing this like I guess taste for cafe racer bikes, so I ended up buying a small GL or like 250 bike, which is essentially a small CC cruiser from Suzuki. I actually ended up like doing a somewhat of a custom cafe project bike, like learning how to work with fiberglass and whatnot. That was an awesome opportunity. And after that, I also got into a KZ400, which was also a decent cafe bike, already converted and more enjoying the bike and the raw, I guess, characteristics of the bikes in terms of like, it was an old bike, so it was just a dog. And I ended up getting my first triple FC Yamaha 09. So this bike was introduced back in 2015. Amazing bike. All I have to say, I did a reflash and a exhaust, as well as some like aesthetics modifications to the bike. It was an amazing bike. The one thing I have to say is, if you have never tried a triple engine, you have to try it. After I got that bike, even though I liked it so much, I was looking for a more horsepower bike. So the FC09 has 110, so that's why I ended up going to the GSX 1000 route, which, if you don't know about that bike and me, maybe you want to watch some of my videos, because that's all I do with this bike. So anyway, I have it right now. I put nitros, I lowered the bike, I've done a lot of things. So you please just take a look at those videos and you hit me up if you have any questions. And I think that Suzuki is now my main bike, and then I kept the bike since 2016. I still have it, and everything that I'm going to be mentioning from now on are bikes that I've been flipping, getting, buying, trading, but always keeping X1000 as my main bike. So to begin with, I actually got into a 2000 Harley Sportster 883. So yeah, I got Harley, and I have to be honest, I hated Harleys for no apparent reason, because I said that I hated them, but I never rode them. So I got into the bike thinking, okay, cool, this is gonna be a quick flip, because the bike was actually in pretty pristine condition. I got on the bike like with this attitude, whatever. I got on it and I'm like, I understand why people like these bikes. It's not about the power. Like 883 is not even an awesome bike, even from a Harley perspective. I mean, it's awesome in terms of it's reliable and a cool bike, but I'm like, it's not top line. It was so freaking comfortable. Anyway, it was an amazing bike. I already had my mind setting to like getting some other different bikes, so I ended up trading the bike for another bike. But I had it, it was cool, and I actually got a lot of fun in it. So from the Harley, I actually got into a Suzuki DRZ400 SM, which is a supermoto designation for DRZs, and that was a cool bike. It was a pretty bike. Sadly and unfortunately, at the time when I had it, I only had it for a few months, and I never got the chance to hit the track, which I really wanted to. Mainly I had 3 bikes at the time, and I got into some financial situation where I needed to make some decisions and make a quick buck, so I actually ended up selling it. And then I also got a Suzuki 2005 GS250 750, which I just sold a couple months ago. That bike was amazing. It was a pretty cool bike. I bought it with the intention of like turning the bike into my racing bike, which is probably it was probably a good idea, but I ended up selling it. I sold it, and I sold the bike with the intention to buy a dirt bike, and I ended up buying my XR250L. I bought this bike with the intention to get it back on the dirt. Riding dirt is actually something, you know, pretty cool. I got to experience it not too long ago here in Arizona. I'm just waiting for the right time for the heat to die down a little bit in Arizona, so I can, you know, put the bike in the corner and start, you know, ripping the bike out and putting it back to the frame, so I can really bring it back to, you know, its old glory. In between getting all these bikes, I also got a 2013 Honda CB500F from a relative. I actually got it as a trade. We were trading some cars from some bikes, and I got it for some time. I did some modifications to the bike, but essentially I knew from the get-go that I was not going to be keeping the bike for a long time, so I just ended up, you know, trading the bike for another thing. And something that I didn't think I was going to be mentioning, but I'll mention it anyway. I got into, I think I have a video for it, but I had 2 Motor Monsters. Those bikes are pretty cool. Those Motor Monster 80cc's, you know, they're not grumps or anything. They're not street legal, but they were pretty fun. I bought them just to get into, you know, biking and sport biking with my son, and we actually got a fun kind of like getting him to, you know, get a feel for handling the bike with me in the back and whatnot. So it was a pretty cool experience. So I think that's actually a good summary of my journey with bikes. So hopefully my intention with today's video was just to walk you through my journey, and where my comments are coming from is from the fact that I own all these bikes and I got to experience the bike. So it was all about my passion and about the thrill of going to Craigslist and put my bike for trade and see what I can get from my bike, and really dealing with people, not with the intention of like me always being the one who wants to win. It was more about me thinking about, I would love to drive that bike, and then putting into the thought process of what can I do to get it. Then am I willing to trade my bike to get that bike, even if it's not in the same condition, and work on it and put it in a good condition where I can flip it in the future, maybe. So that's what I did. So that's how I got into, you know, almost 40 bikes, it just feels my passion. And it makes me put me in a place where I can make educated comments about, you know, bikes, and I feel like I have a very widespread knowledge about bikes, although I don't know everything, and maybe in the past I was not as you know, inclined mechanically as I am today. Maybe I will see things in a very different way today if I had one of those bikes, but it doesn't matter. It actually helped me to understand them, gave me experience, you know, being behind the saddle or on the saddle of the bike. So it was actually a super opportunity. So I encourage you to do it. I mean, if you get tired of your bike, if you have the opportunity to flip it and you can get your hands on a decent bike, just go out on the used market and see what's out there for you. Don't be scared of like selling, getting another one and whatnot. Just like go ahead and do it. feel your passion, and I hope you get encouraged. And please go in the comments and tell me what is your story. Tell me how many bikes you got. Email me if you have any questions, and please subscribe so you can watch my videos. I would love for you to continue to share with you my journey and all the modifications and the things I have coming this year for my bike. So thank you for watching this video and stay safe.